So let's start this today's session. So in this today's session, we will try to cover some of the theory questions which are basically going to ask in your examination, not only in your end semester examination, but also during your practicals. Okay, so these theory questions will be covered basically your MCQs, also what are the formulas that are required to solve the numericals. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so initially we are going to talk about the FEA. Okay, and what is the procedure that is involved in FEA. Okay, so if you talk about this FEA, okay, or basically the finite element method, finite element analysis, it is FEA or it is finite element method. So it is basically a mathematical or numerical technique. FEA or FEM is nothing but a mathematical or a numerical technique where you will get the numerical solution. Okay, where you will get the numerical solution for the equations. In FEA, you will get mathematical or numerical solution for your equations. And what are those equations? Those equations are used to predict the response of physical system which is basically subjected to external force, right? So initially what you should have one equation. Okay, that equation basically governs the response of physical system to the external force which is applied, or external influences, might be force, might be movement. Okay, and if you solve that particular equation, you will get numerical solution, okay, by using any FEA technique. Okay, so you solve that equation by using any FEA technique, so you will get numerical solution. So that is nothing but FEA. Okay, so idea is to write down a mathematical equation for any physical system. Okay, and we need to solve that equation, by mathematical or numerical method, that is FEA. So we'll get a solution, and that is basically a numerical solution, right? So that is nothing but called as FEA. Is it okay? Is it okay with this one? Okay. Now see, what is the procedure which is written for FEA? Okay, we have already practiced this procedure. Whatever the previous problems we have solved, right? So if there is any problem which is given in FEA, what is the very first step? The first step is the discretization. Okay, so that is what is written. The first step in FEA is a discretization. That is, discretize the domain into subdomain. So whatever the entire problem is given, that problem you need to split into number of parts. Okay, so that is nothing but discretization. Okay, and that discretization, it should be in a such a manner that the whatever the elements that you form, that are connected properly at the nodes. Okay, so see, initially you need to form the elements. Once you have the elements, you need to connect those elements at the nodes. Okay, and after that you need to number the nodes and elements. Okay, so once you discretize, okay, once you discretize the system, after that you need to number the elements and the nodes. Okay, now what is the next step? Take very general element. Okay, so out of all those elements which you have formed, you need to take one of the general element. Okay, because that general element will have all the properties which other elements are having. Okay, so for that particular general element, okay, we will apply the governing differential equation, okay, to this general element in the most general condition. Okay, and we will try to get element matrix equation. Okay, so that for that particular element, see, once you discretize, you will get number of elements, you will get number of nodes, and out of those elements, those many number of elements, you just take a general element. Okay, because that general element will represent all other elements, right? And you need to apply the governing differential equation to that particular element, so that you will get EME. You will get EME. EME, it is nothing but element matrix equation. So if you talk about element matrix equation, what is the element matrix equation? Okay, it is stiffness into primary variable is given by secondary variable, right? Stiffness into displacement is given by force. Okay, so if you are able to determine this value, that is EME, that is basically element matrix equation, okay, you will be able to know the values of stiffness matrix. Okay, so very interest to solve the governing differential equation is to get EME, which basically contains element stiffness matrix. Okay, so purpose to get EME is to get element stiffness matrix. Okay, now you have element stiffness matrix which you got for your element. You need to apply that element stiffness matrix to every element, okay, so once you apply that element stiffness matrix to every element, okay, after that you need to go for, you need to assemble those, so that you will get global stiffness matrix. Try to understand. Okay, so you will get global stiffness matrix. See, once you have element matrix equation, that is valid only for element. Okay, so from that equation you will get element stiffness matrix. Okay, element matrix equation, that is nothing but element stiffness matrix you will get. That element stiffness matrix you apply for every element. Okay, after that you assemble all those element stiffness matrices, so that you will get global stiffness matrices. That is basically step number 5. Okay, now you have global stiffness matrices. Okay, now you write down the equation. Global stiffness matrices multiplied by displacement is given by force, right? So after that you need to apply the boundary conditions. What are the boundary conditions that are given? You need to apply. Okay, and now we need to solve that global matrix equation. Okay, so that you will get primary variables, and those primary variables are nothing but displacement. So you'll get a displacement. Now you have calculated a displacement. Now you calculate secondary variable like forces, moments, all those. That is covered in step number 8. And ninth step is you need to represent the what are the solution that you got in terms of tables or in terms of graphs. Is it okay? Is it okay or not? Let me know. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
So now, see, just see about see, if you need to solve any problem in FEA, what is the very basic step? Is to discretize the entire domain into number of subdomain. That is the very first step. Okay, so when you discretize the entire domain into number of subdomain, it will give you the elements. Okay, it will give rise to elements. Okay, so there are certain criteria for discretization. First is change in cross sections, second is change in material, third is the point where they applied the force. At that point you form the node. So these are the 3 criteria based on which we are going to discretize, right? So see here, okay, all of you. So what we'll do, the very basic step. Okay, so what is the first step is the discretize the domain into subdomains using appropriate elements connected at the nodes. So first step it is discretization. Okay, so first step it is discretization. What is second step? You need to number the elements and the nodes. So whatever the elements that you have formed or nodes you have formed after the discretization, you are supposed to number it. Okay, so that will give you step number 2. What is step number 3? Okay, out of all those elements which you have formed, you consider a general element. You consider any element. Okay, basically which is going to represent all other elements. Okay, now you need to apply the governing differential equation to this element in local conditions. So and if you solve this governing differential equation by using some numerical methods, okay, like Rayleigh-Ritz method, it will give you the EME. It will give you EME, that is element matrix equation. It will give, right? Now you have EME, element matrix equation, which basically includes element stiffness matrix, right? So you need to apply this element stiffness matrix to every element. Okay, so once you applied element stiffness matrix to every element, you need to assemble all those element stiffness matrices, so that you will get global stiffness matrices, right? You will get global stiffness matrices. Okay, now you have global stiffness matrices. Okay, you write down global matrix equation, that is stiffness into displacement is given by force. Okay, now this equation you have. Okay, now you substitute the boundary conditions, or you impose the boundary conditions which are basically given, right? So if you substitute it, okay, and just solve it. Okay, you substitute the boundary condition like displacement is 0, then that column gets cancelled. Then you input the values of the forces which are given, right? So by doing those, you solve that governing differential equation. So once you solve this governing differential equation, you will get the values of GME, that is global matrix equation. Okay, you need to solve this GME basically. So you'll get these values like primary variables you will get. Okay, like displacement you will get. Now you have, once you have the primary variable, okay, you try to calculate the secondary variable like forces. Okay, so this will basically includes reactions, and once you have all the results, you can represent all those results in terms of solution or in terms of graphs. Okay, is it okay?
Yes.
Okay, right. Okay, so now see, all of you see, if you talk about these steps 1 2, okay, steps 1 and 2, if you talk about these steps 1 and 2, so this 1 and 2, it's basically pre-processing. Try to understand 1 and 2, it is basically this see, till this 1 and 2, it is basically the pre-processing. Okay, what is pre-processing? Discretize the entire system into number of subdomains. Okay, and just number the elements and the nodes. It is nothing but pre-processing. If you talk from 3 to 7, okay, that is, okay, you can see this many number of steps starting from point number 3 to point number 7. These are called as processing. This is called as processing. Okay, so till you solve it's a processing. Till you solve it is processing. And once you got these answers, it is called as post processing. So 8 and 9 it's a post processing. Is it okay? So this 1 1 2 pre, okay, 3 4 5 6 7 it is processing, and 8 and 9 it is post processing, right? Is it okay? Is it okay to each of you?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
So okay, no problem. So I'll move to the next point. I'll just move to the next point. Okay, so now see, now we are going to talk about this sources of error. Okay, now we're going to talk about the sources of errors in a finite element method, right? Now we're going to talk about the sources of errors in finite element method. So you can see clearly, these questions they have asked many times, right? In December 16, May 16, December again 16, May 16, number of times they have asked. May 14, December 13. So you can consider this to be a very important question, right? So see this question. Okay, so what are the sources of errors in finite element methods? Okay, so which are the points where you can come across the error in finite element method? See this if you talk about finite element method, it is nothing but an approximate method, right? So every method will have some errors. Okay, so let's go to that. So first error will be due to the approximation of domain. Okay, so first error will be due to the approximation of domain. So whatever the domains, if you assume, okay, so due to that there will be error. Okay, due to the approximation of domain. So that is the first error. Second, due to the approximation of solution. Okay, so second error is going to result due to the approximation of solution. And third error, it is due to the numerical computation. So whatever the error, okay, that will arise during your calculation in terms of like numerical integration, right? Okay, or round of error. Okay, so that is nothing but called as, error due to the numerical computation. So these are the three errors: due to approximation of domain, right, due to approximation of solution, and due to numerical computation. Is it okay? right? All of you, is it okay to you?
Yes, sir.
Now let's go to the next point, right? See, now we're going to see what are the advantages and limitations of finite element method. Okay, advantages and limitations of finite element method, right? So see, see this, all of you. So first advantage of FEM. Let's start with the advantage. Let's start with the advantage. Okay, again you can see this question they have asked many times, right? So if you talk about FEM, it can be efficiently applied to cater irregular geometry, right? See, if you have a standard shape, right? If you have a standard shape like rectangle, if you have a square, if you have a circle, right? There will not be any problem, right? The standard formulas are available, okay, and you can go with that, okay. But if I give you the shape like amoeba, you know this shape of amoeba, okay, it's basically irregular shape, okay. See, let me show you, see, if I give you the some shape somewhat like this, okay, and if I ask you to do the finite element analysis for this particular shape, okay, can you go for the standard formulas? Is it a standard shape?
No, sir.
See, it's not a standard shape, right? It's not a standard shape,
Right.
right? So in this case, see, we can't solve this problem by using standard formula. See, you can't consider this entire problem to be rectangle or square or circle, right? Because it will lead to a wrong result, right? So what we'll do, we'll solve this problem by using FEA, okay. So for that, what we will do is we will discretize this entire problem into number of small parts, okay. That is nothing called as discretization. So I will divide this entire problem into number of small parts, and those small parts might be the standard shapes. Is it okay? This is, see, it is difficult to fit the entire problem into small shapes, okay, entire problem into small shape. But what you can do, for this entire problem you can split into number of parts, and those number of parts might be the standard shape. Is it okay? Yes or no? Are you able to get what I'm doing? Is it okay or not? So what I done, I just discretize this entire domain into number of subdomains into standard shape. Is it okay? Is it okay? Right? So see now, so that is the first point. Now see about the second point. It can take care of any type of geometry boundary, right? So you say, so it will take care of any boundary. It might be curved, it might be lined boundary, so it can take care of any type of boundary. Third is material anisotropy and non-homogeneity can be treated without much difficulty, okay. It's not possible that the material should be isotropic and material should be homogeneous, okay. So if the material is anisotropic and non-homogeneous, such sort of problems can be also solved by using FEM, okay. And fourth is any type of loading can be handled. So you can have any type of loading that you can handle by using FEM. Okay. Okay. Now let's move to the limitations. What are the limitations of FEM? Okay. What are the limitations of FEM? Okay. So see what limitations you will face in FEM. Okay. So there are many types of problems where some other methods of analysis may prove more than FEM. Okay. So there are certain problems, okay, in which you will find all those methods which you will find all those methods which are more efficient than the FEM, right? So this is one of the limitations. Cost involved in the solution is high, right? So see, whatever the cost which is involved in the solution of the problem by using FEA is somewhere on a higher side. Okay, if you need to solve this problem by using ANSYS, you need to purchase it, right? So it will add on the cost. Okay, so whatever the cost that is involved in the solution is on a higher side. Okay, if you talk about the vibration problems or stability problems, okay, so the cost analysis might be prohibitive. So if you go for specifically for the vibration or stability problems, so your cost analysis might be prohibitive. So another problem which lies in the varying nature of FEM, okay, that is namely called as approximation method. Okay, so second, see fourth, you can see the fourth point. What is the fourth point? The problem which lies in the varying nature of FEM, that is namely known as approximation. Okay, because your solution may vary due to approximation. Okay, so that is a problem. For problem number 5, stress may vary by 25% from fine mesh to average mesh. See, whatever the values of stress you will get, that will vary from 25% from fine mesh to average mesh. Okay, so in fine mesh, okay, there is chances that you will get 25%, you will get 25% more accurate answer than in average mesh. Okay, than in average mesh. Is it okay? And sixth point is there are other trouble spots. Okay, there are other trouble spots such as aspect ratio which might affect the final results. Okay, there are other trouble spots such as aspect ratio which may affect the final results. Okay, so there is one term that is called as aspect ratio. Okay, that I will explain you. Okay, in this session only. Okay, so that aspect ratio obviously it is going to affect your final answers what you got. Okay, so okay, see what are the another method. One of you have asked the question, what are the another method like FEM, or is it the only one method? See, it is one and same. FEM or FEA, it is one and same, right? And one of you have asked this question, what is singularity in FEA? Okay, so that I will explain, because that is already included in the PPT. Okay, so that I will explain you. That is not a problem. Okay, so these are nothing but the limitations of FEA. Now let's go to the applications. Okay, what are the applications of FEM? See, initially in the first chapter we have solved the assembly problems, right? In assembly problems also we have done the structural analysis. Okay, we have considered the bar under axial load, bar under torsional load. Then we have considered spring system, right? Then we have considered tapered bar, we have considered horizontal bar, we have considered bar under axial load with thermal effect, right? So purpose to do everything is to calculate the value of stress. See, ultimate aim is to calculate the value of stress, and stress will be known when you know the strain. Strain will be known when you know the deflections, right? So see, obviously it is interlinked. So first, see, if you talk about deflection, it is nothing but a primary variable. Okay, so initially you need to calculate primary variable, that is deflection. After that, based on the deflection, you can calculate strain, and after that you can calculate stress. Okay, and certain there are terms like see, that deflection might be linear displacement, it might be angular displacement, it might be force, it might be movement, right? Here it is mentioned bending moment or force, etc. So all those you can calculate during structural analysis. All those you can calculate during structural analysis. Next point is the vibration analysis. Vibration analysis. Right? So see, before in the previous lecture, we have finished with the free axial vibration of rod. We have finished with the free axial vibration of rod. So in that we have calculated the value of natural frequency by using consistent and lump mass matrices, right? We have calculated the value of natural frequency by using consistent and lump mass matrices. Okay, so purpose to do the vibration analysis is to get the value of natural frequency, at the same time the resonant frequency and the dynamic response of the system to varying load. Okay, so dynamic response of the system, that is to the varying load. That means load it is varying with respect to time. Okay, that is nothing but a vibration analysis, right? Next, we have seen thermal analysis. See, when we see in the first chapter, that is basically the assembly problems. In that, we have seen the thermal analysis. Okay, we have analyzed the composite wall, which is basically made up of uh, three different materials. Okay, and which is exposed to some air with some inner heat transfer coefficient. Okay, so we have considered the conduction and convection modes of heat transfer. So in that, we have calculated the temperature at the interface of the wall. After that, we have calculated the heat flow. Okay, so all those calculations we are done. We can calculate the thermal stresses. So all those calculations we can do during the thermal analysis, right? During the thermal analysis. Then fourth is fluid analysis. Okay, let me remind you. In the assembly problems, we have solved the problem for the flow of the fluid through a pipe. Flow of the fluid through a pipe, where we have calculated the pressure. We have calculated the discharge. All those calculate values we have calculated. So that is nothing but a fluid analysis or fluid flow analysis, right? Next application will be in the nuclear engineering, basically where we are interested to determine the temperature gradient, okay, heat flow, all those terms we are going to determine. Next point, it is in the electrical circuit. See, if you talk about this FEA, it is not only restricted to the mechanical engineering, right? All those problems like electrical engineering problems you can solve, you can make a circuits, okay, you can have a voltage, all those terms is going to come there, right? So in electrical circuit, we are going to apply the FEA for determination of charge, then current and voltage, power, etc. Right? And point number 7 is non-linear analysis. Okay, so see, if you talk about the advanced material behavior such as yielding, buckling, or failure, those terms also can be encountered in the non-linear analysis, right? Those terms also can be encountered in the non-linear analysis, right? So these are the some of the applications of FEA. So FEA is not only limited to this particular field only. Okay, the field is very large, huge. Okay, so is there any problem? Is there any problem with this one?
No.
Is there any problem?
No, sir.
Okay, okay. So I can move to the next point. Now see, next let's talk about, okay, what is the difference between the FEM and what are the previous classical methods which are there you might have seen in the mathematics, right? Okay, like Newton code, this Newton codes, God quadrature, right? Taylor series, all those methods you have seen in mathematics. Okay, so now talk about the FEM and what are the classical methods. What is the difference between FEM and classical methods? Okay, so see, in classical methods, okay, exact solutions are formed and exact equations are formed and exact solutions are obtained. Okay, so this is the advantage of classical method. So if you solve any problem by using classical methods, what you will get, it's an exact solution. Okay, if you go for FEA, it will give you the approximate solution, right? See, same problem we have solved by using exact method, and that same problem we have solved by using approximate method, right? Like collocation method, least square method, Galerkin method, subdomain methods, Rayleigh-Ritz method. So we have solved that same problem, right? We have solved that same problem by using all those methods. Is it okay? Are you able to understand? Right?
Yes, sir.
See, what basically we have done is initially we have solved that problem. Initially we have solved that problem by using exact method, right? Initially we have solved that problem by using exact method, and after that we have compare that exact solution with the approximate solution such as this collocation method, least square method, subdomain method, Galerkin method, and Rayleigh-Ritz method. Okay, so initially we have compared that answer by using non-weak method, and then we have compared that answer by using weak methods. Okay, so that is the way, that is the idea. Okay, that is the idea which is behind this, right? Now let's see this next. Let's see this next one. Right. In the classical method, solution can be obtained for the standard problem. Right. So if you have classical methods, okay, so you can obtain the solution in the classical methods only if you have a standard problems. Okay, but if you go for a technique like FEA, okay, you can obtain the solution for all the problems. You can obtain the solution for all the problems, right? You can obtain the solution for all the problems. Next is, whenever the complex geometries, okay, whenever the complexity in the geometry, boundary condition, loading, etc. are faced, the classical methods makes the drastic assumptions, right? So see, whenever there is any complexity in the geometry, whenever there is any complexity in the boundary conditions or loadings, okay, and if you need to solve that problem, okay, by using the classical methods, okay, see, you can solve that problem by using classical methods, but you need to make some drastic assumptions, okay, and see, if you make some assumption, that means what, you are solving that problem, okay, not with the actual conditions, right? Not with the actual condition. So you won't get the solution. You will get a solution, but you will not get a solution for actual problem, right? So whenever there is a complexity in the geometry or boundary conditions or loadings, okay, the classical methods need to make some drastic assumptions, okay, but if you solve that same problem by using FEA, okay, you need to solve that problem as it is. No need to make any assumptions, right? Now you can see the fourth point. If the structure is consist of more than one material or material property is not isotropic, solution becomes difficult in classical methods. See, in classical method, it is expected that entire problem it is to be made up of a same material, and that to be isotropic. Okay, and if you have different material for different element, okay, and that material is not isotropic, if the material is not isotropic, then it is very difficult to get the solution by using classical methods. So if you talk about FEA can handle such sort of problem very easily. Okay, what basically FEA does, see, if you have 5 to 6 material, what FEA will do, FEA will consider every material to be element. So it will ease the solution of the problem, right? So see, if the structure consists of more than one material or material property is not isotropic, then solution becomes very difficult in classical methods. But FEA can handle such a structure without any difficulty. Okay, is it okay? Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let me go to the next slide. Okay, now see, this is very important, right? It is called as basically topology, or it is nothing but node numbering scheme. Simple. What is the meaning of topology? It's a node numbering scheme. Okay, so how you're going to number the nodes? Okay, you're supposed to number the nodes in a such a manner that all the elements should be connected. Okay, so topology or node numbering scheme, it is basically the method of interconnecting nodes and elements to maintain the continuity. Okay, to maintain the continuity. Okay, so you need to number the node in a such a manner that elements are interconnected at the nodes and the continuity should be maintained. Right? And the continuity should be maintained. Is it okay? Okay, see, it should not be like that. See, you're assigning node number 1, 2, okay, 3, like that, and see, at some point it is happened that though the elements are connected, there you are not assigned the number to the node. It should not be. Okay, what happens is, see, if you make any difficulty or if you make any see mistake in assigning the nodes or elements, what happens is obviously your element stiffness matrix will be wrong, and as a result your global stiffness matrix will be also wrong, right? So obviously it is going to affect your final answer, right? So see, this what you can say, this is nothing but a pre-processing, assigning the nodes, assigning the numbers to the nodes, It is nothing but topology. Okay, and it is basically the pre-processing, which is very basic step in FEA, right? So if you wrongly assign the numbers to the nodes, what happens is that your element stiffness matrix will be wrong, and as a result, your global stiffness matrix will also wrong. And if obviously if your global stiffness matrix is wrong, obviously your primary variables like displacement, temperature will be wrong, then your reactions will be wrong, your entire problem turns out to be wrong, right? So this is very important. This is very important. Is it okay? So as I told you, why this is important? So it is a method of interconnecting the nodes and the elements to maintain the continuity. So you need to assign the nodes, numbers to the nodes and elements, so that the continuity will be maintained, and you'll establish a relationship between local and global relationship, right? So local, it is applicable only for element. If you talk about for global, it is applicable for entire problem, which consists of number of elements. So you need to establish a relationship between global and local, right? So see, let's go to the next point. That is criteria for discretization. Okay, what is the criteria for discretization? Okay, so as I told you, okay, I think some of you have have some. Okay, no problem. Let's go to this point, like criteria for discretization. Okay, so as I told you, okay, what is the very first criteria? That is sudden change in the geometry. Geometry, it is nothing but a cross section, right? So if the cross section is varying, that means you need to form that particular section as a element, right? So first criteria will be sudden change in the geometry. So if geometry is changing, right? Okay, let me show you here. Okay, let me show you here. See, let's say you have some cross section here. Let's consider this a bar, okay, stepped bar, which is fixed at one end. Okay, this is fixed at one end. This is having one cross section, and this is having one more cross section, right? This is having one more cross section. Okay, so see, if you can see here, cross section is different. Here also cross section is different. Okay, so I need to call this as a different element. Okay, so I will call this as a different element. So this is a different element. At the same time, this is also the different element. Okay, so this is different element. This is different element because cross section is different. Right. Next, change in material property. Change in material property. Let's consider one more case. Okay, let's consider the one more case. Let's consider again one more tapered bar. Okay, which is fixed at one end. Okay, and let's consider this tapered bar which is having this cross section. This cross section. A single cross section you have. You have a single cross section. Okay, but for this single cross section, what do you have? You have a different material for this particular length. Okay, for this particular length you have different material, right? And for this particular length you have different material. For this particular length you have different material. Okay, so what you need to do based on change in material property? Okay, you need to assume this as one element. Okay, and this as the second element. This is the second element, right? So though their cross sections are same, but their materials are different, right? So based on that criteria, we need to discretize it. That is change in material property. Okay, third point is application of load. Third point is application of load. Okay, let me consider that problem. Application of load. Okay, so let's consider this again. This is basically the fixed support, right? I have this step bar. Now see, this entire this bar, it is having same cross section. As you can see, it is of same material. Okay, so ideally I need to form a single element only. So this has to be a single element, right? But see, if I applied some force here, okay, if I apply some force here, let's say I applied some force here, might be any magnitude. Let's say it is 10 kilonewton I applied. If I applied 10 kilonewton at this particular point, okay, so what happens is the point where you applied the force, at that point you form the node, right? So this point I will be strictly bringing down. Okay, so this is my total length. This total length I need to split into two parts. Okay, so point where they applied the load, that point I'm bringing. So this point becomes node. Okay, so this is my node 1, this is my node 2. Okay, and this is my node 3. Right, this is my node. So this is the third criteria. Point 4 is place where value of unknown is needed. Okay, so if they're asking to calculate some value, okay, where you, if they're asking to calculate, let's say, displacement at some other point, okay, so that point also you need to consider as a node. So okay, so when you consider it as a node, so obviously it will be get split into elements, right? And point number 5 is find an element in the region where unknown parameters change rapidly. Okay, so where unknown parameters are going to change rapidly, that is basically the refinement zone. In that case, you need to form the elements or nodes. Okay, so these are the nothing but 5 criteria. These are the 5 criteria for discretization. These are the 5 criteria for discretization. Is it okay? Is it okay to each of you?
Yes, sir.
Right. Now let's go to the next point. See, type of variable. Type of variable. Okay. See, as you know, okay, we used to write down this always equation, right? The stiffness matrix, right? Stiffness matrix into displacement, that is u. Stiffness matrix into displacement, that is basically u, is given by force. Stiffness matrix into displacement is given by force. Okay, so see here, if you talk about this u, see, if you talk about this u, it is called as primary variable. See, try to understand. This u, it is called as primary variable. This u, it is called as primary variable. While if you talk about this f, it is called as secondary variable, right? U is a primary, f is a secondary variable. Okay. Now see, if you talk about this u again, this u, it is called as dependent variable. Try to understand. This u, it is also called as dependent variable. U, it is called as dependent variable because this displacement will depends upon force. While this force, it is called as independent variable. Try to understand. The force, it is called as independent variable. See, I'll show you again. Okay, see, if you talk about this, basically the equation, okay, if you talk about this equation, what equation we used to write down, we used to write down this equation, right? We used to write down this equation, that is, okay, stiffness matrix, right? Stiffness matrix into displacement, that is u, is given by what? Force, right? Stiffness matrix into displacement is given by force. Right? Is given by force. C is given by force. Stiffness matrix into displacement, right? Stiffness matrix into displacement is equal to stiffness matrix into displacement is equal to force, right? So if you talk about this u, that is basically u term. This term u, it is called as primary variable. Okay, so if you talk about this primary variable, it is nothing but u. Okay, so u, it is nothing but a primary variable. So which is primary variable? It is nothing but u. U is a primary variable, right? Which is secondary variable? Okay, if you talk about this force. Okay, so if you talk about this force, okay, it is secondary variable. Force is a secondary variable, right? Force is a secondary variable, right? Now, if you talk about this dependent variable. So if you talk about this u, it is again a dependent variable, right? U is a dependent variable because u will depends upon the force. And if you talk about force, it is an independent variable. Okay, so force, it is nothing but independent variable. Is it okay? Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Right? Okay. Now let's go to the next point. Types of nodes, right? Types of nodes. So see, there are two types of node basically, which are called as internal nodes, and second are external nodes. Okay, for example, primary nodes or secondary nodes. So these are the types of nodes: internal nodes and external nodes. External nodes can be primary node or secondary nodes. So let's let's move to the next point. Okay, now see, this is very important. That is what is called as a boundary condition. Try to understand what is boundary condition. Okay, so see here, boundary condition. See, this question they've asked multiple times. This question they've asked multiple times. You can see this one, right? So boundary conditions, these are nothing but a physical constraint, right? Boundary conditions, they are nothing but a physical constraint that must exist. Okay, so these boundary conditions are essential. They are essential, right? Why they are essential? Can anybody tell me?
Sir, without boundary condition, we can't solve the numerical.
That is the only reason. Because only for solving the problem you require boundary condition. See, I will give you the simple example. See, if you talk about the fan is fixed to ceiling. The fan is fixed to ceiling. Is it a boundary condition?
Yes, sir.
Simple. See, fan is fixed to ceiling. It is nothing but a boundary condition. Now, if the fan is not fixed to ceiling, what happens? Can the fan can swing if it is not fixed to ceiling?
No, sir.
Can you hang the fan in air? Can you hang that fan in air? See, that is very important.
No, sir.
Yeah, see, that is the reason. See, boundary condition, they must exist. Okay, they must exist so that the structure can stand in a space uniquely. That is very significance of this boundary condition. Okay, so you can clearly point it out. The boundary conditions are physical conditions that must exist so that structure can stand in the space uniquely. Okay, if the boundary conditions are there, then only can structure can stand in the space, otherwise not, right? So see, there are two types of boundary conditions. Okay, types of boundary condition, all of you can see. First is essential boundary condition. See, you just try to remember all those names. Okay, just see, because for single boundary conditions you have three names: essential or geometric or Dirichlet boundary conditions. Okay, so this is very simple. The boundary conditions which are expressed in terms of primary variables, essential boundary conditions, these are the boundary conditions which are expressed in terms of primary variable. The boundary conditions which are expressed in terms of primary variable, they are called as essential boundary condition. Okay, so if I ask you, see how to write down this essential boundary condition. See, if I write down that u at x is equal to 0. See, u at x is equal to 0 is equal to 0. Okay, u at x is equal to 0 is equal to 0, or u is 0 when x is 0, right? So this boundary condition, it is called as essential boundary condition. This is called as essential boundary condition because this boundary condition, it is expressed in terms of primary variable, that is basically u. Okay, this boundary condition, it is expressed in terms of primary variable, that is u. Okay, that's why it is called as essential boundary condition. See, go to the next point. Natural boundary condition or force boundary condition or Newman boundary conditions. These boundary conditions are expressed in terms of secondary variable. Okay, now see, if I give you the boundary condition like this, okay, if I give you the boundary condition like du, okay, du, I'm giving the boundary condition du by dx, try to understand, du by dx at x is equal to 0, du by dx at x is equal to 0, du by dx at x is equal to 0, okay, is equal to 0, If I give you the boundary condition like this, see here, if you talk about this boundary condition, u is 0 when x is 0. Here, du by dx is 0 when x is 0. Right? Both boundary condition are described for the same boundary, that is for x is equal to 0, and value of both the boundary condition at x is equal to 0 is same, that is 0. Here also you can say the value is 0. But if you talk about this first boundary condition, it is defined in terms of u, which is basically the primary variable. That's why it is called as essential boundary condition. While if you talk about this second boundary condition, it is defined in terms of du by dx, and which is basically the secondary variable. Okay, if you talk about this du by dx, it is nothing but secondary variable. Du by dx, it is secondary variable. Okay, because it is a derivative of primary variable. Okay, that is nothing but a secondary variable, right? So that is nothing but called as a natural boundary condition or forced boundary condition or Newman boundary condition, right? So it is one answer. Okay, so try to understand the boundary conditions which are in terms of primary, they are essential. Boundary conditions which are in terms of secondary, they are natural, right? Essential, it is also known as geometric or Dirichlet. Natural, it is also known as force or Newman. Okay, and third type of boundary condition, they are mixed. Likewise, these boundary conditions are expressed in terms of both the variables, like primary and secondary. Okay, so if the boundary conditions are expressed in terms of primary variable as well as in terms of secondary variable, then such sort of boundary conditions are called as mixed boundary condition. Such sort of boundary conditions, they are called as mixed boundary condition. Okay, now go to this first boundary condition, homogeneous boundary condition. These boundary conditions are equal to 0. These boundary conditions are equal to 0. Okay, so if I write down some value like this, u at x is equal to 0, u at x is equal to 0 is equal to 0 is equal to 0. Okay, then this is called as what? Homogeneous boundary condition, because in these boundary conditions are equal to 0. See here you are getting on a right hand side, you check this boundary condition on the right hand side, you are getting equal to 0. That's why they are called as homogeneous boundary condition. Okay, but if I write down some value like this, okay, du by dx, okay, du by dx, okay, at x is equal to 0, du by dx at x is equal to 0, du by dx at x is equal to 0 is, let's say, 1 is equal to 1. Okay, so here on the right hand side you are not getting equal to 0, on the right hand side you are getting equal to 1. That's why such boundary conditions, they are non-homogeneous. You can see it is not equal to 0. Here it is not equal to 0, that means it is equal to 1. Okay, that's why it is non-homogeneous boundary condition. Is it okay? Is it okay? Is it okay to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now next let's go to this the point of global, local, and natural. Let's go to the concept of global, local, and natural. Okay, so let me start. Okay, let's consider this element. Okay, let's consider this element. Okay, let's consider this element which is having basically two nodes. Okay, this is node number 1, and let's say this is node number 2. Okay, now Now see, if I ask you what is the location of node 2 with respect to node 1. Okay, if I ask you what is the location of node 2 with respect to node 1, then such system it is called as local system. Okay, if I ask you what is the location of node 2 with respect to node 1, it is called as local system, or this is called a local coordinate system, because you are asking the location of the node, where you are asking the location of the node with respect to the node which is on the same element, right? If you talk about node 1 and 2, they are lying on the same element, and you are trying to determine the location of node 2 with respect to node 1 which is lying on the same element. So such concept it is called as a local coordinate system. Such concept it is called as local coordinate system. Okay, now let me take one more example. Now let's consider same problem I drawn. This is node 1. Okay, this is node 2. Now I'm asking what is the location of node 2 with respect to some point which is lying outside the element. Okay, what is the location of node 2? What is the location of node 2? See, here we have calculated the location of node 2 with respect to node 1. Here I am asking what is the location of node 2 with respect to this fixed support. Okay, so that fixed support, it is basically lying outside the element. Okay, so such sort of system it is called as global coordinate system. Such sort of system it is called as global coordinate system. Okay, so if you measure the location of node number 2 with respect to node number 1, it is called as local. But if you measure the location of node number 2 with respect to this fixed support, which is basically outside the element, this is called as a global coordinate system, right? Okay, now just see the third point. Okay, so if the location of any, if you talk about this local and global, they are basically the Cartesian coordinate. Try to understand this global coordinate system and local coordinate system, they are basically in the Cartesian coordinate. Okay, but the third system, it is called as natural coordinate system. Okay, in natural coordinate system, we are interested to replace x. See, if you talk about the Cartesian coordinate, what do you have? You have x coordinate, okay, on the horizontal scale, and you have y coordinate on a vertical scale. But if you talk about the natural coordinate system, okay, we are interested to replace this value of x, okay, by zeta. Okay, see, we are interested to replace value of x by zeta and y coordinate by neta. Okay, you replace x by the zeta, x by zeta, and y by neta. Okay, so there we need to transfer Cartesian coordinate into natural coordinate. So there is some transformation method how to convert this Cartesian coordinate into natural coordinate, right? So that is nothing but a natural coordinate system. And what is the limit for zeta and neta? So minimum value for zeta is -1, maximum value for zeta and neta is +1. Okay, so it is lying between zeta and zeta, it is lying between -1 to +1. Zeta and neta, it is lying between -1 to +1. Okay, I think that here we need to write down like this: -1, okay, zeta, okay, -1 greater than or equal to zeta, okay, neta, okay, and it should be less than or equal to 1. Okay, this is the right point. It should be less than equal to 1. That means zeta and neta should be lying between -1 to +1. Okay, this sign we need to make it reverse. This sign we need to make it reverse, right? Zeta and neta should range between -1 to 1. Okay, it should not be greater than 1. Okay, so here we need to make this some correction. Okay, it should be like this. It should be like this. Is it okay? See, advantage to solve the problem by zeta and neta. See, if you go for x and y coordinate, you need to have the limit. Okay, starting from 0 to infinity. Okay, what is the minimum value of x? It is 0. What is the maximum value of x? It is infinity. Okay, so in Cartesian coordinate, we need to move from 0 to infinity. But in the natural coordinate, we are going to restrict that entire problem between -1 to +1. Okay, so that is the advantage that we will get. And see, you can't do that directly, right? There we need to transform from Cartesian to natural. Okay, to Cartesian to natural. Okay, and that transformation it is done by Jacobian matrix. So Jacobian matrix, it is basically the matrix which will relates xy coordinate to zeta eta transformation. Okay, it will relates Cartesian coordinate to natural coordinate. That means it is used to translate. It is basically the transformation matrix from Cartesian to natural coordinate. Is it okay? Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let's go to the shape functions. Okay, we have already derived the shape functions. We have derived the shape functions for initially 1D element. Try to understand. Let me summarize you. See, we have derived the shape functions. For what we have derived, we have considered one-dimensional element. Okay, we have considered one-dimensional element. And which are those one-dimensional element? One-dimensional element is only one element. Okay, and which was that element? It is a line element. Okay, it's a line element. Okay, or bar element. Line element or bar element. Okay, and that bar element we have considered that bar element can be either linear, okay, or it can be either quadratic. Okay, it can be linear or it can be quadratic. I don't understand. Linear or quadratic. See, we have started with the one-dimensional element, shape functions for one-dimensional element. In that, we have considered bar element, and bar element we have considered it to be linear, it can be quadratic, or it can be cubic. Okay, it can be cubic. I don't understand. Okay, now what is linear element? The line with two nodes. Okay, that is nothing but a linear element. Right, line with the two nodes. Okay, it is called as linear element. Okay, if you have a line with the three nodes, it is called as line with the three nodes. It is called as quadratic. Okay, and if you have a line with the four nodes, it is cubic. See, two nodes. What is the meaning of two nodes? See, meaning of two nodes is what is two nodes? Two node, it is nothing but one element, right? Try to understand. Two nodes means one element. Okay. What is the, see? Let me know. What is this two nodes? It is nothing but one element. If you have three nodes, it means you have two elements. Three nodes means you have two elements. Okay. And if you have four nodes, that means you have three elements. Try to understand. See, we have already gone through it. Right? We have already gone through it. Try to understand. Is it okay or not? Let me know. Is it okay or not?
Yes, sir.
See here. What is linear element? Let's consider this linear element. Simple line I have drawn, which are having two nodes. See, you can see two nodes means one element. Now I will draw quadratic. The quadratic will have three nodes. Okay, this is quadratic element with three nodes. That means two elements. And cubic means you have three elements. Means you have four nodes. So these are the three elements with the four nodes, right? So that is nothing but a bar element, right? After that, we have gone for 2D element. Okay, we have gone for two-dimensional element. Okay, and see all of you in the two-dimensional element. Okay, we have seen first three-noded triangular. Try to understand. This is very important. Huh? Three-noded triangular. After that, we have considered four-noded rectangular. Okay, four-noded rectangular. Because for all those, we have derived the shape functions. Four-noded rectangular. Then we have considered four-noded quadrilateral. Okay, four-noded quadrilateral element we have considered. Okay, after that we have considered eight-noded quadrilateral. Eight-noded quadrilateral, right? So for all those elements, we have derived the shape functions, right? We have derived the shape functions. Try to understand here. We have derived the shape functions, right? So see, for three-noded triangular element, we have done it in a local coordinate. Local coordinate. For four-noded rectangular element, we have done it in a local coordinate. See, let me write down here. For this one, we have derived in a local coordinate. Okay. For four-noded rectangular, again, we have done the same. Okay, that is in the local coordinate. Are you able to recollect it or not? Let me know. Because we already derived, huh? I'm not like asking you some new thing. For four-noded rectangular, we have finished with this local coordinate. For four-noded quadrilateral, okay, we have done it by using natural. We have done by using natural coordinate system. Okay, and again for four-noded quadrilateral, okay, we are done by using again natural coordinate system. By using natural coordinate system. Right? So this we have done. This we have done already. We have derived the shape functions. Okay, no. Come back to here. Now come back to here. Right. So see, value of shape function is always equal to 1, right? If you talk about the value of shape functions, if you add all those shape functions, you will get value. It is equal to 1. Okay. So see, what is the meaning of this one? Shape function is equal to 1. If you add all the shape functions, see, shape function, it is defined for every node. Okay. So if you calculate n1, and let's take the example of three-noded triangular, where you have 3 nodes. So you will get 3 elements. Okay. See, you have 3 nodes, so you will get 3 shape functions, namely n1, n2, n3. And if you add all those n1, n2, n3, their addition will be equal to 1. Okay, now see, value of shape function is always equal to 1 for the node for which it is defined. See, if n1 shape function n1, it is defined for node 1, so obviously its value is equal to 1 for node 1. Okay, see, let me take some example. Okay, let take me some example. Okay, I will take some example. In that case, you will be able to understand. Okay, let's consider this triangle. Let's consider this triangle, which are having 3 nodes. Let me call this as node number 1. Okay, let this call as node number 2, and let's call this as node number 3. Right? Now see, n1 it is defined for node 1. n1 it is defined for node 1. So value of n1 is equal to 1. Value of n1 it is equal to 1. Okay, for which node? Okay, for node 1. Try to understand. For node 1. For node 1, n1 is equal to 1. Okay. Similarly, n2 it is defined for which node? Node 2. n2 is defined for node 2. So value of n2 is equal to 1. n2 is equal to 1 for which node? Is equal for node number 2. So n2 is equal to 1. n2 is equal to 1 for node 2. Okay, similar thing is going to happen with node number 3, because n3 is defined for node 3. So n3 is equal to 1. n3 is equal to 1 for which node? For node number 3. For node number 3. So value of n3 is equal to 1 for node number 3. Is it okay? Is it okay? So what is about rest of the node? If you calculate n1, if you calculate n1 at node 2, if you calculate n1 at node 2, okay, it will be 0 obviously. What is the value of n1 at node 2? It is 0. Similarly, if you calculate n1 at node 3, if you calculate n1 at node 3, if you calculate n1 at node 3, obviously its value will be equal to 0. N1 at node 3 will be equal to 0, right? Similarly, you can do it here. If you can calculate n2, if you calculate n2, let me write down here. If you calculate n2 at node 1, if you calculate n2 at node 1, okay, it will be 0. It will be 0. Similarly, if you calculate n2 at node 3, shape function n2 at node 3, obviously it is equal to 0. It is equal to 0. Okay, similar thing we will do it here. We will calculate n3. We will calculate n3. Okay, at node 1. So if you calculate n3 at node 1, its value will be equal to 0. Similarly, we can calculate n3. We can calculate n3 at node 2. Similarly, we can calculate n3 at node 2. Again, its value will comes to 0. Right? Its value will comes to 0. Right? Now, if I ask you to just add all of those. Okay, just take the addition. 1 plus 0 plus 0, it is 1. Okay, 0 plus 1 plus 0, it is again 1. 0, 0, 0 plus 1. Is it okay? Is it okay or not? Let me know. Is it okay? Let me know. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
So see, what is the use of this? See, so these 2 points how I have covered. All those 2 points I have covered. Okay. Now let's go to the third point. Right? Let's go to the third point. What the third point says? It enables to predict the value of primary variable everywhere within the domain. Okay. So what is the meaning of that? Let's consider this triangle. Let's consider this triangle. Okay. Okay. So this, for this particular triangle, you have 3 nodes: node number 1, node number 2, node number 3. Okay. If I give you the temperature at node 1, that is T1. If I give you the temperature at node 2, that is basically T2. And if I give you the temperature at node 3, that is basically T3. I have given you the 3 temperatures. That is the temperature at every node. And I'm asking what is the temperature at this particular point? What is the temperature at this particular point? If I'm asking where this point it is lying within the element. Within the element it is lying, right? So I will calculate temperature at that particular point. Temperature at that point T, it is given by, okay, it is N1 T1. Okay, we already solved this problem. N1 T1 plus N2 T2, N2 T2, okay, plus N3 T3 plus N3 T3 plus N3 T3. Okay. So all see how this is how we will calculate the temperature at this particular point. Okay, so if I ask you what is the temperature at point P, let me call this as point P. So I will calculate temperature at point P. It is nothing but N1 T1, N2 T2, N3 T3, where N1, N2, N3 are shape functions. So with the help of shape functions, you can calculate the value of, see what it is written. It enables to predict the values of primary variables everywhere within the domain. So temperature, it is nothing but a primary variable. Instead of temperature, you can write down displacement. If I ask you what is the displacement at point number P, you can write down UP. Displacement at point number P is given by N1. Instead of temperature, you replace by displacement U1. Okay. Instead of T2, you should have the value of U2. Instead of T3, you should have the value of displacement U3, right? Similarly, you can calculate pressure. Also, you can calculate pressure at point P. So for that you require pressure at point number 1. See, what if I ask you what is the pressure at point P? What is the pressure at point P? So that can be calculated as N1 P1, N2 P2, right? N2 P2 plus N3 P3 plus N3 P3, right? Is it okay? Because these shape functions N1, N2, N3, they will depend upon the location of point P. N1, N2, N3, these are the shape functions which will depend upon the location of point P. So obviously, if N1, N2, N3, they will depend upon point P. So it will give me the temperature or displacement or pressure at point P, right? Is it okay? Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so let's move to the next point. Okay, now see, this is very important. Huh? This is very important. Try to understand it. See, weighted residual methods. See, in this lecture only I told you, okay, weighted residual method. See, if you talk about all those methods which are on the current slide, all these methods are approximate methods. All these methods are approximate methods. So weighted residual methods, there are two weighted residual methods. First is a non-weak and second is weak. Okay, first is non-weak and second is weak. So see, in non-weak, what you're doing is, in non-weak, you're going to solve that differential equation as it is. You're going to solve that differential equation as it is. And in weak, what you're doing, in weak form, what you're doing, whatever the equation that is given to you, you are reducing the degree of that differential equation by half. Okay, that means you are making that equation weak. Okay, see, in non-weak, you're going to solve that differential equation as it is. That's why it is non-weak. But in weak, what you're doing is, what are the governing differential equation they have given, that you're going to reduce to its half degree. Okay, and then you are solving. That's why this is called as weak. Okay, so which are the non-weak methods like collocation, Galerkin, least square, and subdomain? So see, each method will have some different procedure to solve, right? In collocation methods, we need to take number of locations is equal to number of constants. In Galerkin method, weight functions are the coefficients of arbitrary constants in approximate solution after satisfying all given boundary condition. In least square methods, weight functions are the coefficients of approximate solution in residue equation after satisfying all given boundary conditions. In subdomain method, weight functions are equal to 1. Okay, weight function is equal to 1, and you need to split the domains into number of constants, so number of domains will be equal to number of constants, right? So see, we have already solved this method, you know how to solve it, right? Only thing I just need to revise is, okay, this all those four methods, collocation, Galerkin, least square, and subdomain, they belongs to non-weak form, while Rayleigh-Ritz method mapped over entire domain and Rayleigh-Ritz method mapped over general element, it belongs to weak form, right? It belongs to weak form. Is it okay? Is it okay to each of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now see, now let's move to the next slide. That is convergence criteria. Okay, and see, you can see how many times they ask this question. Convergence criteria, that is basically or H method or P method. Convergence criteria, H method, and P method. Let's first see what is convergence criteria. See, if you solve the same problem by using more number of elements every time. Okay, so let me explain you. Okay, how it works. Okay, let's see this. Okay, let's consider this element for which you need to do the analysis. Now let's consider these are the single element and you do the analysis. Okay, you will get some value of displacement, right? Now instead of having a single element, you divide the single element into two elements, and now you do the analysis. You will get again some value of displacement, right? Now again what you do? Again what you do? You divide this entire problem into, let's say, now three elements. See, initially there was only one element. Okay, now you divided this into two elements, then you solve. After that, you divided into three elements, and then you solve. So every time what happens is you will get different value of displacement, right? Every time you will get different value of displacement. See, because you are moving from coarse mesh to fine mesh. Okay, because you are moving from coarse mesh to fine mesh. That means what? You are moving to more and more accurate answer. Okay, that means you are moving to what? More and more accurate answer. Okay, now see, you have started with a single element, you have gone to two element, you have gone to three element. Let's say after that you have gone to four elements, 1, 2, 3, and let's say four elements. Now you have four elements. These are the four elements. Okay, you are solving with the four elements. And what happens that if you solve that problem by using four elements, your answer, it is coming equal to exact answer. Try to understand. Your answer, it is coming equal to exact answer. Okay, that means what? This problem can be solved by using maximum four element. Okay, so though you solve this problem by using five elements, okay, you will get same answer. Though you solved it by using six element, you will get same answer, right? Is it okay or not? Because already you know the exact solution, and by using four elements, your answer, it is coming equal to exact solution. Okay, now irrespective of increasing the number of elements, okay, you will get a same answer. Okay, so idea is this one. See what they say is try to understand. If particular problem is repetitively analyzed, right? If you solve that problem repetitively by using fine mesh, what is the meaning of finer mesh? By using more number of elements, we will get a sequence of approximate numerical solution. Okay, so let's say by using one element, you will get one approximate solution. By using two elements, you will get one more approximate solution. By using three elements, you will get one more approximate solution, right? But every time what happens, you are moving to fine mesh. Okay, now how will you check that your answers or whatever the sequence of approximate solution that you are getting, okay, it is approaching to theoretical correct answer. Okay, so in convergence criteria, what you are doing is we are going to model the problem for which exact solution is known. Okay, so we will solve that problem for which we know the exact solution, and we will try to solve that problem by taking say by increasing the number of elements. Okay, so at the point where we will get the exact answer or the answer which is same as the exact method, at that point we will stop. Okay, because see, by taking one element, you are getting one answer. By using two elements, again you are getting answer. By using three elements, you are getting answer. But when you take four elements, your answer, it is coming same to exact answer. Okay, so at that point we need to stop. Okay, so see what is the advantage of this convergence? The converger contributes to the confidence with which FEA can be used in practice, because analysts can guarantee that result might approach to correct answer as mesh is refined. Okay, so as you move from this say what you can say fine mesh, coarse mesh to fine mesh, obviously your answers will be goes on refining. Okay, you will tend to more and more close to exact answers, right? Now, in addition, the convergent proofs or point-ups the condition necessary for the fast convergence and good accuracy. Okay, and thus provides the useful guidance in designing the new elements and improving the existing elements. So this concept of convergence, it is very important as far as design of new elements and improving the existing elements are concerned, right? Now go to the next point. That is, what is the H method? Try to understand what is H method. See, in H method, what we are doing, we are number of elements are increased by keeping the order of elements same. See, all of you see here. This is a linear element. This is linear element. Okay, element is linear. Okay, but just I will add more number of elements. So that is nothing but H method. Try to understand. In H method, what we are doing, number of elements are increased by keeping order of elements same. Okay, so I will assume this element to be of first order, that is linear element. Element of first order, that is nothing but a linear element, because it is having only 2 nodes. Okay, so what I will do, I will keep on increasing the number of elements. I'll just keep on increasing the number of elements. See, let me explain you how it works. Okay, let me explain you how it works. Okay, let's consider I need to do the analysis of this particular stepped bar. I need to do the analysis of this particular stepped bar. Okay, I need to do the analysis of this particular stepped bar. This is stepped bar, right? So how many elements you're going to consider? See, okay, obviously you're going to consider this as a single element with how many nodes? 2 nodes. Single element with 2 nodes. Okay, this is a single element with the 2 nodes. Okay, so element with the 2 nodes, it is called as a linear element. So we have considered only one linear element. Try to understand. We have considered only one linear element. We have considered it to be only one linear element. But instead of doing like this, what I will do, I will consider this. I will divide this entire problem into 2 elements. Try to understand. I will divide this problem into 2 elements. Okay, but each element will have 2 nodes. That is linear element, right? See here what is the element? It is linear. Okay, here what is the element? It is linear element, because the element it is having 2 nodes. Okay, now I need to solve the problem by using H method. So what I will do, I will increase the number of elements. So see, initially I have considered it to be only one linear element. Now I will consider this to be 2 linear elements. Now I will solve this problem by considering the 2 linear elements. Is it okay? 2 linear elements. Is it okay? Is it okay or not? So initially, initially there was only one element. Okay, so what I have done, I have increased the number of elements. You can clearly read it out. Number of elements are increased. So I have increased the number of elements from 1 to 2. Okay, by keeping the order of elements same. Okay, so what is the order of every element? Every element, it's a linear order. Every element, it is of linear order. Linear order. Okay, that means every element will have 2 nodes. You can see here element number 1 will have 2 nodes, 1 and 2. Here element number 1 will have 2 nodes, that is 1 and 2. And element number 2 will have again 2 nodes, that is 2 and 3. Okay, that is nothing but H method. Right? Now go to the next method, that is P method. Okay. You see, in P method, what is done? Order of element is increased, right? Order of element is increased. So try to understand what I'm doing here. Okay, so this is, let me see that this is a fixed support, and we have this stepped bar. Okay, a bar with the same cross section. Okay, this is the problem which is given. Now order of element you need to increase. Okay, now see, when I solved that problem initially, okay, I have considered this to be a linear element, and then I will solve. Okay, linear element, I will consider this to be a linear element. Okay, and then I will solve. Okay, try to understand. I will consider this entire problem to be a solved by using a single linear element. Only one linear element. Try to understand. One linear element. Okay, linear element. I will solve this entire problem by using only one linear element. Now, if I need to solve this problem by using P method, I need to increase the order of element. So instead of solving by using linear element, I will solve this problem by using, try to understand, by using quadratic element. Okay, quadratic element. So for quadratic element, I will get 3 nodes. Try to understand. Node number 1, node number 2, okay, node number 3. Okay, but this is a single element. This is a single element. This is only the single element. Here also you have one element. Here also you have one element. But this element was linear. Okay, and this element, it's a quadratic element. Try to understand. This element, it's a quadratic element. Is it okay? This element, it's a quadratic element. See, in the last problem, in the last H method, we have increased the number of elements, and we have increased the order of element. Okay, here we have increased the order of element. You can check here. We have increased the order of element from linear to quadratic. Okay, by keeping the number of elements same. So we have kept the same number of elements. Here also there is one element. Here also there is one element. Okay, but here it was a linear element, that is element with 2 nodes. Here it is quadratic element, that is element with the 3 nodes. Is it okay? Is it okay or not? Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now next go to the next slide. Now see, next we will see this patch test. Okay, try to understand. Now we are going to see the patch test. Okay, and this patch test, it is very important when you run first time the finite element program. Okay, so when you run any finite element program for the first time, okay, you need to perform this patch test, and it's basically a simple test, right? So this patch test, it ensures the theory of finite element formulations have been correctly implemented. That means this patch test, it ensures that whatever the theory or whatever the concepts of finite element methods or formulations are there, they have been correctly implemented or they have been correctly practiced, and the installation of the analysis system is also correct. Okay, so whatever the analysis system that you have installed, that is also correct. Okay, now see, if particular program passes the patch test, right? So that means if you have written any program, okay, and if that program has undergone that patch test when it is first time performed, okay, and if that undergone that patch test, that means you can ensure that convergence is satisfied, right? You can ensure that convergence is satisfied. We already know, just a time before we have seen what is convergence, right? So if any element or if the particular element that passes the patch test, it ensures that your convergence criteria are satisfied, right? So when this element is used to model any other problem, successive mesh refinement will produce a sequence of approximate solution that converges to exact solution, obviously, right? So I will read it again. If a particular element passes the patch test, okay, so if any element is going to pass that patch test, we have to ensure that we have the assurance that convergence criteria are met. The convergence criteria are met. So we will guarantee. So we will get the guarantee that the convergence criteria are met, and therefore, when this element is used to model any other problems, and when you use this element for solving any other problems, okay, as you keep on refining the mesh from fine mesh, coarse mesh to fine mesh, obviously it will produce a sequence of approximate solution that will convergence to exact solution. Okay, so with see, I will explain you a simple. With the elements which have passed the patch test, if you use the element which has passed the patch test, okay, and if you just keep on increasing the number of elements, what happens is every time you will get the approximate solution, which is basically is going to converge to exact solution, right? So if you talk about this patch test, it serves as a necessary and sufficient condition it is a necessary and sufficient condition for the convergence. An element that fails the patch test cannot be trusted. So if your element has failed in the patch test, okay, then no one is going to trust on the patch test. Okay. Okay, so in that case, no one is going to trust for the patch test, right? Is it okay? See, I'll tell you the patch test. When you need to perform the patch test, when you're running any finite element program for the first time, at that time you need to perform the patch test. Okay. So if you're running the patch test, that means it ensures that whatever the concept of FEA have been properly implemented, right? And the installation of analysis system is also correct. If any finite element, if any element is going to pass the patch test, then it ensures that the convergence has been satisfied, and you can use such sort of element for modeling any other problems. Okay, because it ensures that as you go on refine the mesh, okay, your approximate solution will tend to exact solution. And if your element fails in the patch test, so no one is going to trust on the element. Okay, because this patch test, it is a necessary and sufficient condition for the convergence. Okay. See, one of them asked me, well, what is a convergence criteria? Can you ask it, repeat it again? See, what is basically convergence criteria? See, you solve one problem by using exact method, right? You solve one problem by using exact method. Okay, so you will get the exact solution for that one. You will get the exact solution for that one, right? Now, what do? You solve that problem by using finite element method, right? You solve that problem by using finite element method. So obviously, the finite element method will give you the approximate solution, and you use any method. Right? Now, let's say that you have solved that problem initially by using one element. You got one solution. Now you solve that problem by using two elements. You will get one more solution. Okay, you solve that problem by using three elements. You will get one more solution. But when you solve that problem by using four elements, let's say, you're getting the solution which is matching exactly with the exact answer. Okay, whatever the solution that you got by using four elements, it is the same or it is close to the exact solution. Okay, that means your convergence is been satisfied, right? So idea is we are supposed to model the problem whose exact solution is known, because by just increasing the number of elements, we can reach to that exact solution. Okay, so that is basically the idea. Now see, all of this here. Next, I think some of you have again have some doubt. Let me see that. Now see, just see the next point. What is subparametric, isoparametric, and superparametric element? See, this is very important. Okay, now see, all of you. Let me see, or let me explain you with the help of some diagram. Okay, so let me draw some diagram here. Okay, let's consider this rectangular element. Let's consider this rectangular element. Okay, where you have these four nodes. Okay, where you have these four nodes. Okay, let's see that this node. See, I'll mark this circular node. This 1, 2, okay, 3, and 4. Okay, these are the four nodes. These four nodes are going to define the geometry. Okay, these four nodes are going to define what? Geometry. The four nodes are going to define the geometry. Okay, four nodes are going to define the geometry. Okay, now what we will do, try to understand. These four nodes are going to define the geometry. Okay, now let's consider this one. Right? Let's consider the square. Let's consider the square. Okay, let's consider the square. Okay. Now, can anybody tell me? Now, can anybody tell me how many circles you are getting and how many squares you are getting? Can anybody tell me how many circles and how many square you are getting? Okay, circles. This is a circle. This is circle. This is one circle. This is one circle.
4
Right? So we are
circles
getting
and
4
4
circles. Okay, and let's say how many square you are getting? Square. And square are basically going to define the displacements. Square are going to define the displacement. Okay, how many square we are getting? We are getting 8. We are getting 8 squares, right? We are getting 8 squares, right? We are getting 8 squares. So see what happens is circles are, see if you talk about this circles, these circles they are 4, right? Circles are 4 and 4 is less than 8. Okay, 4 is less than 8. What is the meaning of 4 is less than 8? Circles are less than square. Circles are, number of circles are less than number of squares, right? And what is the meaning of circles? They are the nodes which are used to define the geometry. Okay, so the circles which are basically defining the geometry, they are less as compared to the square which are defining the displacements. Which are defining the displacement. That's why such sort of element it is called as a sub-parametric element. That's why such sort of element it is called as a sub-parametric element. Is it okay?
Yes, yes.
Is it okay? Now let's go to the second case. Okay, let's go to the isoparametric. Let's go to the isoparametric. Okay, I will do the same thing. Here I will put a circle. Here also I will put the circle. Okay, here also I will put the circle. And here I will put the circle. Okay, how many circles I have? I have how many circles? I have 4 circles. 4 circles. What is the meaning of circle? It is for geometry. Okay, and let's say on every circle I will have a square. Okay, on every circle I will have a square. On every circle I have a square. Okay, now how many square I will have? How many square I will have? I will have 4 square, right? I have 4 square. That means 4, you can see here, 4 is equal to 4, right? 4 is equal to 4. That means what are the circles are equal to square? What is the meaning of circles? These are the nodes. Circles are nothing but the nodes which are used to define the geometry. And square, these are again the nodes which are used to define the displacements. And both are 4. That means the nodes which are defining the geometry are same, see here, are equal or same as the nodes which are used to define the displacement. They are same. That's why this is called an isoparameter. This is called an isoparameter. Is it okay? Is it okay with this one? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now just come back to this point. Now come back to this point. Okay. Now what I will do here is, okay, see on 4 corner, okay, on 4 corner I will put circle. On 4 corner I will put circle. Okay. This is circle. Okay, again on a 4 corner I will put square. 4 corner I will put square. 4 corners I will put square. Okay, and what I will do, I will add circles here. I will add the circles here. Try to understand. I'm adding the circles here. Okay, now what happened here? Okay, what is the size of circles? It is 6, right? What is the size of square you are having? 4. Yes or no? Size is 4. Okay, that means 6 is greater than 4, right? 6 is greater than 4. Okay, 6 stands for circle, 4 stands for square. What is the circle? These are the nodes used to define the geometry. And square, these are the nodes used to define the displacements. Okay, so the nodes which are defining the geometry, they are greater than the nodes which are defining the displacement. Okay, than the displacement. That's why such sort of element it is called as super parametric element. Such sort of element it is called as super parametric element. Is it okay? Is it okay, all of you? Is it clear, each of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So today we are going to stop in this lecture. In the next lecture, we will try to go through some other concepts of FEA. Okay, obviously there will be the questions which are asked in the university examinations, and after that, okay, I will brief you about some of the sample papers which are expected during your examinations.